Welcome today to Prophets and Prophecy. I appreciate you being with us, and I appreciate your patience. Now, those of you that follow our broadcast know that we have not had a broadcast in 3 or 4 weeks. And the reason for that was a medical situation, and I had 3 coronary procedures and had to have a few more stents put in my heart. Now, we're back on board, and things have changed a little. And so today is a preamble of things to come. And I want each and every one of you that view this and that follow our ministry to be well aware that things are changing in the kingdom of God, and things are changing in the church, and things are changing in our lives. Now, since we last talked, God gave me a visitation. Now, whenever you're talking about an epiphany or an angelic being appearing or hearing an audible voice, some people are skeptical. But that's their loss and our experience. You know, somebody told me, don't ever judge something God gives you by whether or not it is accepted by people that have never had that kind of experience. So let me start from the beginning. And this is a broadcast you need to share with everyone you love and care about, because it changes everything. 3:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, God woke me up. And there was an angelic type being standing by my bed. And I asked them, "What do you want of me?" Very clearly, they informed me that I was to change the entire nature of our broadcast. We are not Christian pundits. We are the prophetic outreach for the church and the bride of Christ in the last days. And we are changing our format from the Ukraine, the medical procedures, the politics, and election, whether it be election misconduct or whether it be miscount. Those are not the church's battles to fight. We are walking into the beginning of the days of sorrow. And God has instructed those that I have talked to, as well as myself, that we are to not focus on the fires and the red flags around us, but to go back to the how and why things are happening in our world today. If I told you how big a change we are facing, it might frighten some. In fact, I got a text from my darling cousin, and she said, "I love your ministry. I don't want to miss any of your broadcast. But it scares me sometimes, and I have no one in the home right now to hold my hand in the middle of the night and calm my fears." Well, I'm going to tell you this. This is not to frighten. This is to inform. This is not to put the fear of God in you, but to allow the love of God to lead you. Now, we all know that the Word of God is the beginning of wisdom. And the Bible puts it like this: the fear of God, the fear of His holy things, and not frightened that He will bring judgment to you, but frightened that you might miss the perfect will of God, is the beginning of wisdom. So we're going back not to show you what's happening, as I said, on the Ukrainian border, what's happening in court cases, what's happening about riots and BLM in street corners and in the battlegrounds of Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, but what's happening in the church world. And this was the direct quote that angelic being gave me. Tell the people how and why things are happening like they are. Now, I get calls all the time, And I'm not trying to deter you from calling me. I listed my number on our website. You can reach me anytime you please, and I will answer the phone if it's available. But right now, I am here to tell you as a voice to the people that there are things happening that you know not of. In fact, sometimes in the past, whenever I would touch on certain subjects, I would get put in Facebook prison, or YouTube will censor what I'm saying. But I have gone around that. In fact, I got a call from one of the alphabet companies from Washington, D.C. And they told me, they said, you are very close to being put on a list of domestic terrorists. And I said, why? And they said, because you're touching on subjects that they do not want exposed. Now, after that, I began praying and then had the epiphany. So I have gone to a system that I feel God honors. I know the information is totally correct, and I know the rights and the freedoms that I have to speak it. I have gone to total peer review from some of the leading scientists in America, what I consider some of the greater legal minds in America, and looking for those things which I can bring to you that will help you in the days ahead. Now, Matthew 24 was very explicit when Jesus said 4 times to his disciples, "Be not deceived." Now, deceived means that you actually feel like you're right when you're wrong. You believe it. You know, the Bible said this, talking about deception, and very few preachers ever use this for their text on Sunday morning. But the Bible said in the last days there would be those that believed a lie and were damned. Now, here's the key word to that. He was not talking about sinners. He was talking about the church. They would believe a lie. That means they were totally deceived into thinking this was the truth. You know, the sad part about believing something is that when you believe it, you credit it with all the truth you can gather. And being deceived means that you put that truth together in a misconstrued manner so that it does not portray the entire truth of the situation. You know, I told somebody one time, we had a little bit of a debate. Are you lying when you tell somebody something that you think is the truth? You see, a lie is whenever you falsify truths that you know to be relevant. In other words, I can tell you that my hair is black and that I've had black hair all my life. And you know what? You can look at me and think, boy, not only is he colorblind, but now he's got, onset dementia. But, I know my hair is not black. And I don't care how many times I say it, how often I bring it up. I don't care with what emotion I use to describe my hair. It's not black. But what if I was deceived? And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see white hair. I saw black hair. When I told you my hair is black, I would not be lying. I would be deceived for whatever reason. When you tell something for the truth and you believe it to be true, that does not make it true. It just means that in your mind, that is the truth. Now, if you tell something as truth and you know for a fact it is not true, then it becomes a lie. So what Jesus was telling them, I don't care how many times you hear it, I don't care with what emotion it's presented, I don't care who brings it to the table, be not deceived. many in the last day will believe a lie and be damned. The key word, last day, believe, and damned. You said, well, Brother Hagin, if I believe it to be true, then it's not a lie. No, it's not a lie, it's deception. So understand as we go forward, we're not just dealing with untruths, we are dealing with deception. People that feel like they have the truth in their hand only to look down and see that it does not match the facts. And they only see that when it's too late. Now, the church is undergoing a cataclysmic change. We are undergoing a morphing from what we were taught to what we want to believe. And here's how you know when you're getting on slippery slopes. I have heard this used so many times. And if you ever use it yourself, stop before you say another word and think about what you're fixing to say next. And here's that phrase. I know what the Bible says, but I was taught, I think, I feel, the way I see it. At that point, you have just walked into the abyss, because now you are taking truth and twisting it to fit the narrative that makes you comfortable, and you're trying to believe this with all that is within you, and now you fall into that category of the deceived. You know, I keep going back to this sometimes, but there was a time on earth when there were sailors, adventurers, scholars, politicians, rule makers, legal minds that thought the earth was flat. And there were mariners that really believed when you sailed to the horizon that your ship would fall off into another abyss and you would be lost forever, because the world could only be what they could see with their eyes. It took men of great courage, whether it be Magellan or Columbus, or whether it be the Saxons that sailed off into the sunset, not knowing what they were going to find if suddenly in their sails the sea ended and they fell into an abyss they didn't know. But you know, it's amazing to me how that those that are brave enough to look for truth are favored in all things. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So where our broadcast will be going in the future, we're going to bring to you truth. Truth that comes from the lips of some of the most renowned scientists in America, if not the world. And we're going to be bringing things to you that legal experts have looked at and given me permission under my First Amendment right to put on this broadcast and bring to you. Now, there are buzzwords that we can't use because the algorithms and the censors for the community are well aware when you say certain phrases and words on the internet. So I will not be using some words. I'll figure out a way to describe it in a code word. But I'm going to bring you truth. And this is what the angelic being said. Tell them how this will come to pass, and tell them why this too must come to pass. You see, there's things in the Bible that we read and it suggests that maybe something would happen, or maybe it gives you a prelude to something that might happen. But when it said, this must come to pass, that is a third dimension prophecy, and you can't change it. Your theology can't change it. The leaders in your church can't change it. The politicians in Washington can't change it. I'm going to be sharing with you information that God has led me to, and information that I have confirmed, like I said, through some of the greatest scientific minds in the world. It also was confirmed by the Freedom of Information Act. I'll be going back to 1954 when DARPA was formed, and the CIA used it as a funding experience and a situation where they would use DARPA to do black projects and experiments on people around the world. And their goals, their objectives, the how they're doing it, and the why they're doing it. And I will overlay that with biblical prophecy. You will not hear this anywhere else that I know of. There have been some that might have hinted at it. In fact, 3 years ago when I was teaching about nanobots and the 5G magnetic pulse that was coming, that's before Verizon started running their advertisements and AT&T started competing in the 5G market. God gave that to me 3 years ago. And those of you that have followed our broadcast this entire time will remember that. I talked to you about the currency that we were dealing with, the fiat currency that is used around the world that was unsustainable. I talked to you about Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi passing a bill 3 years ago, 2,200 pages, that allowed the central banks and the banking system and the Federal Reserve to create digital currency and digital wallets and do away with what we call printed legal tender. Now, I'm not going to get ahead of myself because I have to revisit some of those to get us where we're going. But I was getting calls then from Washington, D.C. I told you I got a call from someone representing one of the three-digit agencies, alphabet agencies that we have in our government. And the first words out of their mouth was, "Are you Dr. Joseph Paul Haygood?" And I said, "Yes, I am." They said, "Did you write the book, The Seer Chronicles, subtitle, The Caliphate?" I said, "Yes, I did." And they said, "How did you know about the National Economic Stabilization and Recovery Act?" I said, "Why is that a question now?" And they said, "Because that is the blueprint being used around the world to go to the quantum financial system and change government as we know it and change currency as we know it, economy, the economic stability, the financial powerness of the United States of America around the world. How did you know that?" I said, "Well, I can tell you, but you probably wouldn't believe it." I said, "The Lord woke me up when I was writing the book at 3 o'clock in the morning. I keep a pad by my bed and pencil. And when God gives me something in the wee hours, I raise up, I write it down, and then I research it when I get up the next morning." And I said, in the middle of the night, or 3:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock, I said, the angel woke me up and said, "Look up National Economic Stabilization and Recovery Act." Now, that's not something you would necessarily have with a pizza dream. That's more than just saying, "Hey, think about the weather changes." But you see, God never really spoke to me in generality. So I looked it up. Got up at 8 o'clock, had coffee, remembered that I had it on my pad, went in there, looked it up, and it is a law that was put into effect after the Great Depression that allows the president and the Congress to change interest rates, forgive debt, to change structure, to change currency, whatever they feel they need to do to offset the onslaught of another Great Depression. And we'll cover this as we go forward in the next broadcast. As I said, this is a preamble of what's to come. And he said, you're telling me that God woke you up and told you something that probably 99% of the congressional party here in Washington knows nothing about? I said, I guess. That's what happened. And then he made a statement, and I'm saying this to quote him. He said, are you expecting me to believe that you are a modern day prophet and God speaks to you things that the Congress has not even considered? And by now, my righteous indignation was a little stirred up. And I said, sir, take it into consideration that you called me. I did not call you. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, well, we've bought a case of your books, and we're distributing them out to our analysts. And he said, you're telling us things that is the blueprint for the saving of the world and its economy. And I laughed, and I said, well, if you'll look at the front of the book, that book was written 20 years ago. And he got quiet. I could tell he was flipping through something. And he came back and he said, you know what, you're right. 20 years ago, he said 20 years ago, most of the people reading your book now wasn't even out of high school. I said, isn't it wonderful to know that if you follow God, that Amos was true, what he wrote was right, when he said in the last days, I will whisper my secrets in the ears of the prophets, so that my people be not deceived. I can tell you, I've already talked to them today. I get calls at least once a day, every day since then. And here's the question, what's going on? How do you see this? Have you considered this? What do you think about that? That is no glory to me. It's the fact that people are recognizing outside of the walls of the church that God has a hand in what is going on around the world today. Some are trying to do it with philosophers. Some are trying to do it by making and changing laws, creating mandates. Others are trying to do it in their meditation. And then there are some that are going to God. Those that go to God for direction in the last days will not be deceived. After the angel came and told me to tell the how and the why, to not be a pundit and talk about things we cannot change. I can't tell you who won the election in Arizona. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the trial of the young man in Wisconsin. I can't tell you what's going to happen with the immigrants coming across the border, but I can tell you what God said. You see, let me share something with you. Here is the difference that many people in the church don't understand. I've had them tell me, oh, brother so-and-so was by here, and he's a prophet of God. He's a man of great faith. Well, not to burst your balloon and not to take away from anybody else's ministry. Prophets do not deal with faith alone. Great faith does not a prophet make. Prophets dwell in the domain of obedience. What happens if you don't want to go down to Nineveh and you're disobedient? You wind up in the belly of a well. What happens whenever you go to curse God and your donkey speaks to you? There's angels standing there to kill you. You see, angels are God's servants. Prophets are God's voice. Prophets that speak what they hear are doing that in obedience, whether it be speak this now or be silent now. Tell the people to go to the right, tell the people to go to the left. Prophets do not operate on the strength of their faith. They operate on the strength of their obedience to what God gives them. It's time that prophetic voices came out of the darkness and began to speak in obedience. Now, I know there are several that are dismayed right now at the prophetic because of statements that's been made in the last year about changes in our politics, in our leadership, and in control of our country. I will tell you exactly what God gave me, and I had numerous calls from friends, loved ones, and total strangers. And they said, what is going to happen with the election? I said, I can only tell you what God gave me. God gave me three things: that there would be riots and unrest before the election, confusion during the election, and chaos after the election. Well, does that mean that so-and-so is going to be the president, or so-and-so is going to be elected, or we're going to be following after this party or that party? That is not what God gave me. If I would have said any more, let my emotions get involved or my desire get involved, I would be disobedient. And God needs prophets today, not speaking by faith, not speaking by learned knowledge, but speaking with obedience to the voice of God. When you say God said, you better have heard from God, or you are lying on God. And that's a scary place to be, but we'll cover all of it. As I said, this is a preamble of what our broadcasts are going to be from this day forward. I'm asking you to share this with everyone you know. I will do the broadcast as quickly as I am able. As I said, everything that I will be telling you, teaching you, and bringing to the forefront will go through a rigid peer review with the legal minds that God has put in my life and the scientists that God has put in my life and the preachers, those scholars that God has put in my life. I want to rightly divide the word of truth, but I've got to tell you the truth. And this is what the angel said. Tell them how it's going to happen and tell them why it's going to happen. Do not be a pundit reporting the news. This is not a news broadcast. This is prophets and prophecy. Now, those of you that have been supporting our ministry, I'm going to say something I've not said before. We really need your help now. This requires having some staff to help look up some of the stuff. This requires having equipment that we don't have now to bring it in a more palatable way. This requires hours and hours of research. I've gone through thousands of pages in the Freedom of Information Act to bring to you what we will be talking about in these next few broadcasts. It is not hyperbole that I got off somebody's Facebook page. This is not something that I gleaned listening to pundits argue on ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, even Fox and Onan. This is stuff that God has given me and has shared with me the information that we need to bring to you. Anything I bring to you, you could take to a court of law, put your hand on the Bible and say, I affirm this to be the truth. And it will change how you look at current events and things we're dealing with today. But in order for me to do that, I need some help. Now, many of you are faithful in monthly donations. I'm asking those of you that are considering helping us, do it like this. Do it on a monthly basis to our PayPal account, and you'll see it at the bottom of the screen, jphim.org. Go there, go to PayPal, and put in an ongoing monthly donation. That way, we have a budget to work with, and the people that are assisting us can be remunerated for their time and their equipment that we use. Remember this, the Bible said that a laborer is worthy of his hire. I'm not asking you to sign over the deed to your house. I'm not asking you to give me your retirement fund. I'm asking you to help share in the financial load that we carry to bring you truth without reproach. How and why in the last days. We love you. We appreciate you. We've been picked up by 4 television stations, and we have been picked up by a podcast called State of the Nation. All of that will be at the end of this broadcast. We'll list it on the black page that you see. Look for that information. And thank God, I'm excited to say we've been picked up by the Branson Gospel Television Station in Branson, Missouri. And I'll try to get all of that information shared with you at the end of this broadcast. But until then, those of you that feel led of God or just feel sorry for me, please go to our PayPal account, give us an ongoing monthly donation, and we're going to bring you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. We love you. May God bless your home. May God bless your family. And may God bless America. Until then, we love you. Be highly favored